Jin stood calmly, as if not noticing the blade from the aura. He replied to Zed that Zed decided to use a unique technique to intimidate cadets, despite the fact that Jin was in class. Zed swung his sword slightly, and a small wound appeared on Jin's left cheek. But the boy stood motionless and waited for an answer from his uncle. Zed asked his question. Jin didn't like that he was scaring the cadets, so he decided to make this commotion. Except for the part that he didn't like, it was just as Zed said. In that case, Jin should have challenged Zed. Why did he hurt another cadet? Zed was interested to hear his nephew's answer. Jin replied that he didn't attack him because he couldn't defeat him now. If he thought he would come out victorious, he would not have attacked Kajin or his brothers, but his uncle. Zed said Jin didn't seem to value life, or they hoped too much for the status of the patriarch's son. The sword-shaped aura on his arm dissipated. Jin replied that this was not the case. Sitting back just because his opponent is stronger is not what a member of the Rankandel family would do. The legs of the cadets nearby were on the verge of trembling. They had no idea on what basis this 15-year-old newcomer could stand on his own and talk like that. Zed spoke again only after a few seconds of thought. Death will be only a moment, and honor will be a legacy. How stupid. But that was what Zed Rankandel wanted to hear. Z grinned and suddenly burst out laughing. Jin's bravado was so absurd in his eyes that it made Zed happy. Zed recognized Jin. He was really worthy of his surname. Zed loudly told the cadets to remember this day. Today they saw what it's like to be in the Rankandel family. Jin decided to show that the Rankandels are crazy fanatics. Zed told the cadets to fight and not forget who they are. After these words, the cadets were free. Training starts tomorrow. Cadets began to leave the training ground in an organized manner. The twins felt the blood being sucked out of their bodies. Jin spoke as he passed them. As their younger brother, he gave them advice. Now they could be more afraid of their older brothers and sisters. But will it be the same further? He told them not to dwell on what was happening now. They'd better think about the future. The twins couldn't even answer Jin when he smiled gently. Jin finally returned to his room. He put his bradamante on the sofa. He turned to Jilly, who was carrying a tray of tea. Jin said that he announced the battle for hegemony to the twins, but the older sisters, Mew and Anna, were probably covering for them. He injured one of the twin students. After some questioning, it turned out that he was from the faction of his older sisters. He learned all this because the twins did not know how to keep their mouths shut. Right now, Kajin belonged to the Gemini faction. If Mew and Anna find out about everything, they will surely be furious. His brothers would never have been able to take a knight of the 5th rank into their faction, because they usually recruit those who are weaker into their factions. Jilly froze instantly. She stopped dead in her tracks. She expected Jin and the twins to fight for hegemony when the younger boy moved to other classes. It was an inevitable conflict while they were all inside the same fence, called the intermediate class. However, Jilly did not expect the twins to have a patron. Soon her gaze darkened and became deeper. She was full of anxiety. Mew and Anna have already reached the rank of flag bearers. There is an unspoken rule that flag bearers could only fight with other flag bearers. In fact, the fact that his older sisters are already trying to keep Jin in line is good news. This meant that they were already worried about him despite their age difference. Since they are both flag bearers, they do not have the opportunity to attack him with their own hands yet. The only thing they can do is disrupt the distribution of his team and increase the complexity of missions due to their authority. Then there will be a chance that he will be wounded or killed. But there's one thing his older sisters don't know about. Most difficult missions are tasks for one person. But if he gets assigned single missions, Jin won't have to hold back and hide his true abilities, will he? Unlike group missions, Jin will be able to use magic and shadow energy when performing single missions. He could use magic, shadow energy, and combat techniques recorded in the secret folios of various battle clans while no one was around. Therefore, single missions are a great opportunity for him. If his older sisters send Jin on solo missions, he will be immensely grateful. It's suffocating to limit yourself only to fencing. He will just complete missions, use his hidden abilities to destroy his enemies and get some achievements. Achievements and missions. This was an absolute criterion by which teachers evaluated cadets of the intermediate class. There were cases when a cadet was an excellent swordsman, but lagged behind in completing tasks, and vice versa. Needless to say, missions were a more important criterion. Moreover, single missions with high difficulty were the best missions to complete in order to get the most points. Solo missions usually consisted of assassinations and espionage, so they were the most dangerous. He was also sure that no one would mind if he took the cat with him. But he won't take Murakin on assignments. Murakin will do something else. Until then, they need to lay low. The intermediate class began its training in earnest. Compared to the initial training class, there are no special differences in the mode, except for the fact that the cadets used real swords and the difficulty was higher. However, when the afternoon classes began, Jin and the twins were taken to a hidden area inside the training ground and taught Rankandel fencing. It was a privilege only available to Rankandel's direct descendants. Zed started his little speech. Their family's fencing prowess is, in simple terms, overwhelming. It is destructive and unshakable. The individuality and virtues of the Rankandel family are perfectly embodied in their fencing. Rankandels fight, win and own. These character traits of the Rankandels were reflected in this art. The twins' faces were bruised and swollen, just as Jin had predicted. They were beaten all night by their sisters. However, Zed didn't even bother to ask why the twins were in such a deplorable state. He didn't care. He already knew that the twins didn't have much potential even before Jin moved into the middle class. Zed continued his speech. Rankandel fencing has no specific definition, but there are secret techniques that can only be learned by being a flag bearer. Fencing does not have a fixed form, whether it is the position of the legs or the stance. This is the main difference between the Rankandels and other noble families. Zed asked the twins and Jin why their swordsmanship was shapeless. Jin replied that it was because of the unique physical abilities and talents possessed by the Rankandels. That was true. To be a Rankandel is to have a great pedigree. Their physical performance and swordsmanship skills were not even dreamed of by an ordinary person, even if they have minor flaws. Their level is still much higher than average. That's why it was so easy and simple for them to learn. Now Zed will give each of them a steel ball. Holding the steel ball in his hands, Jin felt that there was something inside the ball. These steel balls were called pure stone. When they hit, they made a ringing sound. Zed slowly unsheathed the sword attached to his belt and applied it to the clean stone. Now they will hear 3 types of sound, so they should be more attentive. The first blow. Zed didn't put much effort into his sword and just lowered it slightly onto the ball. A rather thick and muddy sound echoed through the room. There was a feeling that someone would feel nauseous if they listened to it for a long period of time. Soon Zed hit the ball again. This time, there was much more power and speed in his swing than before. This time, a clear and elegant sound worthy of the name of pure stone rang out in the room. The sound seemed to have penetrated their ears and calmed their entire bodies from the inside out. The twins exclaimed in amazement. Jin's eyes also widened as he looked at the pure stone. It's been a long time since Zed last heard that sound. As they saw, a pure stone makes a thick and muddy sound when you hit it weakly, but it makes a beautiful sound when hit with perfect force. Jin seemed to understand everything. The essence of the training is to make the sound perfect with every beat. This was done to train the strength of spirit, willpower, perseverance, and concentration. If we take into account the physical abilities of the Rankandel family, this exercise is ideal, although its essence is simple. However, they only hit a piece of steel. Jin thought it was too boring for the Rankandel family's special training. Jin was curious, what was the third strike? He could definitely hear the rattling inside the stone. Jin found the answer to his question. When Zed raised his sword for the last time, he immediately grabbed the necks of the twins standing on either side of him and pushed them. The surprised twins fell to the ground together with their younger brother because of his strength. As soon as they touched the floor, the twins were ready to curse Jin, but they could only blink in shock as they watched the situation unfold. After Zed's final blow, the pure stone exploded with a deafening roar. A lot of steel balls flew out from inside. They flew in all directions like arrows. An ordinary person would have easily died from being pierced by all these powerful projectiles. Surprised, the twins looked around. They felt their hearts sink as the balls rolled on the ground. Zed praised Jin's reaction. These stones were designed to explode if they took too much of a blow. Zed spoke with a satisfied smile on his face. They've learned everything they need. Now they finally start training. If you hit too hard, it will end like this. Zed said that they were the first after the moon who did not suffer from the stone. Most of their siblings studied with Zed, so this cruel provision is part of the dedication. Zed didn't think there would be another unharmed child. Jin asked how the moon was able to avoid damage. Zed replied that maybe Jin would be disappointed when he found out about it. At least his brothers were annoyed. Jin was ready for this. Zed said that unlike Jean, she didn't shy away. Like the others, Luna took the hit, but it was so strong that there was not even a scratch left on it. As Zed had warned them, it was a somewhat discouraging story. Nevertheless, Jin was quite satisfied. If one of his siblings had escaped all the balloons, unaware of the dangers of this demonstration, it would have meant that they were more gifted and talented than Jin himself. After the story, Zed made them train. They should be pure stone until they give out a clear sound at any time and in any situation. The room of the moon. The woman in question was spending a peaceful and relaxing time inside, sipping a cup of tea with her babysitter. Her nanny's name was Nanny. Nanny turned to the moon. She thought Anna and Me were very suspicious. There was an incident when they tried to keep Jin under control. 2 of them were talking about potential suspects in the assassination attempt on Jin when he was just a year old. Ever since Luna first heard Jin's words when she visited him at the Tempest Castle, she has been searching for the culprit to this day. She didn't give up even after 5 whole years. It was because she cared a lot about her younger brother. But that wasn't the only reason. It was a long-standing and traditional taboo within the clan when a pure-blooded Rankandel living in the main house touched the life of a family member who had not yet left the Tempest Castle. If Luna had informed Shiren about this incident, it would have caused a lot of chaos in the clan. However, she decided that it would not benefit Jin, so Luna decided not to report to her father. Moreover, they didn't have any evidence. It's true that these two are very domineering and tend to overstep their boundaries, but Luna didn't think they would be crazy enough to try to kill someone in the Tempest Castle. To be honest, Nanny thought there was a possibility that Jin had lied to Luna. Then he was only 10 years old. They haven't learned anything in all these years. Luna didn't think Jin was lying to her. Then he was wary of her. Not because it was awkward for him to communicate with her for the first time, but because he was on guard. His look. It was the look of a man whose life was in danger. Nanny asked if they should take a closer look at Mew and Anna. Yes, Luna will leave this matter in her care. The moon is more concerned about the fact that they haven't found anything yet. Something was wrong. She had an ominous premonition. Nanny was worried, too. Worried about what her brothers and sisters might do to her. Luna smiled, telling her babysitter not to worry. She had already survived her 30th birthday, so she thought that her nanny's worries were unnecessary. Luna hoped Jin was doing well. She believed that her mind's eye training would help Jin pass Zed's initiation. Pure stone really hits hard. Luna is sure that Jin will be fine. It was great to watch Jean Ross. She smiled warmly every time she remembered him. A day passed. 4 hours have passed since the start of the training. Jin and the twins still had to create a beautiful sound by hitting clean stones. Fortunately, until now there have been no cases when someone accidentally burst steel balls. Unpleasant sounds have been echoing in the hidden training room for 4 hours in a row. Jin could say with confidence that among all the training he had done in his life, this was by far the most unbearable. These disgusting sounds made it difficult for him to concentrate. The twins have already vomited on the ground a couple of times. Meanwhile, Jin was sweating like a bucket, but somehow managed not to let go of the sword and fall to the ground. In the morning he experienced the hellish training of the intermediate class, and in the afternoon he constantly knocked on clean stones. Jin was on the verge of death. He couldn't get used to these unpleasant sounds and echoes, no matter how hard he tried. Zed announced a 5-minute break. As soon as the words left Zed's lips, the 3 boys sat cross-legged on the floor. However, the Tone twins' posture was terrible as they were exhausted both mentally and physically. In fact, the 5-minute break wasn't exactly a break. According to Zed's training regime, the boys had to hold their swords straight and cover them with an aura while sitting straight, and maintain this position during the so-called break. So the break was, in other words, an exercise during which they trained their aura. Jin's hands were shaking as he gripped the hilt of the sword, while the twins couldn't even hold on properly. The purpose of this training in the first place was to increase the destructive power of their aura. Zed destroyed the pure stone without using any aura, but that was only possible because he was a knight of the 8th rank. The 3 boys first had to train and develop their auras to hit the pure stones with enough force so that they would make a beautiful sound, not to mention make them explode. Jin closed his eyes and focused his senses on the aura covering his sword. Even his stupid brothers in a previous life could have done it, so he can, too. So Jin didn't need to be impatient. Zed noticed it on the first day, but Jin was special. Gemini isn't so bad either, but Jin can even break the moon's record. Zed mentally praised Jin, but didn't say it out loud. He could always praise the boy who broke Luna's record. Training with clean stones ended only in the evening, after the twins collapsed from exhaustion. They had completely exhausted their physical and mental strength, so they eventually lost consciousness. Zed clicked his tongue, calling them pathetic. Zed told Jean to tell the twins that if they kept being stupid, they might not come. Zed followed Jean and the twins with a thoughtful look. The twins were exhausted much later than he thought. After all, they are real Rankandels. But the youngest, despite the fact that he was 2 years younger than the twins, he managed to survive today's training without losing consciousness. It was an incredible feat considering that his body hadn't developed as much as their bodies. Zed loudly lamented that Jean was the youngest in the family. Judging from what Zed saw today, Jin was the most talented child among Shiren's 13 children, although it was debatable whether he was better than Luna. He was much more gifted than Joshua, the future patriarch. However, he was too young. Jin was only 15 years old. Even if he trained seriously and became a 9-star knight by the age of 30, Joshua would already be the leader of the clan by then. These days, the authority of the patriarch has gradually begun to pass to Joshua, very slowly but steadily. If Jin had been born 10 years ago, then all of Rankandel's powers would have been concentrated in his hands. It was truly a disgrace. A month later, March 1795, training of middle-class cadets. The assistant instructor of the intermediate training class shouted loudly, demanding attention. In total, there were 3 assistant instructors in the middle class. He announced that the middle class had received its first mission. Those cadets whose name he calls should come forward. The first mission is security. They are tasked with protecting the recruits from the Blacksmith Association. The guards will be Houston, Wyden, and other cadets. So the second mission was announced. The third mission is the destruction of demonic creatures. Their target will be orcs. Location: unprotected lands of the Principality of Kirano. When the assistant wanted to announce those who would participate, his hand stopped as soon as he turned the page. He frowned before making sure he read the names on the document correctly. Meza, Bellop, Scott, Tamant, Kiko, Yusin, Eddington, Sierra, Pills, David will participate in this mission. This 10 was from Jin's faction. There are 2.5 dozen orcs on them, which must be destroyed. Since they move in rootstock or in groups, they must gather their determination and give their all. That was it. The assistant wished them good luck. There was a commotion among the middle-class cadets. The target was not only the orcs, but also the entrance to the unprotected zone. Half or more of the junior squad members will surely die during this mission. However, there was not a word of protest addressed to the assistant instructors. Since the flag bearers chose this lineup, they had no say in it. If anyone objected to this, it had to be the faction leader, Jin himself. If Jin personally went to look for the flag bearers to complain, he could easily replace the participants of the third mission. He could either make a deal or use the authority and influence of the moon. However, it will eventually bite him later. He would publicly admit that the members of his faction are not experienced enough to send them on official missions. And if he uses the power of the moon, Jin will prove that he himself has no strength or qualifications. In that case, Jin would checkmate himself. Thus, the junior squad had no choice but to go along with him and complete the mission. The senior cadets pitied them, and the cadets from the Gemini and Elder Sisters faction mocked them, saying that it was worth preparing their graves. Tamant was furious at the ridicule, so he wanted to fight back, but Meza kept him from rash actions. So far, they weren't strong enough to compete with him. There is a mission ahead. He will still have time to injure himself. Tamant didn't want to let them get away with these insults. Meza even had to yell at him. They should focus on the mission they have received and return intact after its successful completion. That's how they'll put them in their place. It was the only way at the moment. Daytona's pure stone exploded. The steel balls flew past Daytona and headed towards Jin, who focused on his sword and steel ball. Jin was hit in the side. If it had been his own steel ball, Jin would have avoided the projectiles. But someone else's ball explodes and balls fly into it from the side. It was inevitable even for him. Hayton timidly approached Jin. He said he didn't do it on purpose. Jin was fine. But from that moment on, he wanted the twins to train somewhere away from him. They moved away, pushing their desks into another corner. It's been a month since Jin started training with pure stones, and his older brothers started blowing him up. He still thought it would take more time. But what was that feeling? It was as if a path of iron beads appeared before my eyes, and it was sealed so clearly, like the trajectory of an arrow. If the fragments of the stone fly at him again, then he will definitely be able to dodge. Jin suggested that it had something to do with Luna's training. Before Jin could forget this feeling, he wanted to try again. But at that moment Zed appeared. Jin and the twins immediately ran up to him and corrected their position. Zed announced that they had been taught missions. The twins' mission was to attend the ceremony. They were ordered to attend several events and parties organized by Emperor Bement and the Dukes of the Empire to curry favor with them. To tell the truth, calling this invitation to parties a mission was a shame. There was absolutely no risk that they would see blood or conflict during this mission. All they had to do was eat excellent dishes prepared at parties and have fun in the Empire. However, the twins' faces crinkled when they heard the details of their mission. Attending ceremonies was a type of mission that was assigned only to direct members of the Rankandel family. The family could ignore invitations and the like from the average nation, but the Empire's invitation was a different story. The Rankandels couldn't turn them down so easily. Thus, one of the Rankandel children had to accept the invitation and attend the events. Therefore, whenever an invitation arrived from the Bement Empire, the children of Rankandel prayed that they would not be chosen. None of them wanted to attend these nauseating and boring parties. Zed said a few words of condolence. Thanks to the sacrifice of the twins, the rest of the brothers and sisters will not have to dance at the imperial reception. The twins could only sigh. Zed heard them sigh. Even though it's an invitation to a party, it's still a mission. If they showed this attitude again, he promised to beat them so hard that they would beg him to kill them. The twins nodded, hiding their disgust. Jin chuckled. His sisters Mew and Anna were mean. They were clearly punishing their ignorant brothers by sending them to a social event in the Bement Empire. It was a big event, and it will be difficult to refuse even if you are a Rankandel. Many bigwigs will gather there. Zed told them to learn something useful from them. Now it's Missy Jean's turn. Zed stopped in the middle of a sentence. The twins listened attentively to his next words. They were curious to know how crazy a mission their sisters had assigned to Junior. Rear to kill. The goal is the toy of the master of the Talaris Layan Palace. In other words, one of her many lovers. The Ice Palace is a huge tower in the middle of the western sea of the continent. It is owned by the master of the Ice Palace, the 51st Master Talaris in Dorma. also known as the Spider of the Abyss. She became famous for being ruthless to anyone who attempted to kill her lovers. The Ice Palace is an independent force beyond the influence of Rankandel and Zippel. Jin's target was named Elcaro Shanderer. He was accompanied by the people of the Ice Palace and lives in the criminal district of Mamita. The twins exclaimed loudly in disbelief. Missions in Mamita were usually assigned to guardian knights. This was not a mission that a mere middle-class cadet like Jin could accomplish. The murder of the lover of the master of the Ice Palace in Mamita. The Tone twins already believed that Jin would never return alive from this mission. The customer is the Shanderer family. They ordered the murder of their own Dick. Zed said that they did everything possible to get him back, but apparently they didn't succeed. They decided that he would rather die than reveal the secrets of the family. Zed asked Jin if he could handle this task. Jin replied that he would do it. There was not a drop of doubt on his face. Zed was somewhat stunned. Jin probably knew about the master of the Ice Palace in Mamita, but he just agreed. If Jin had said that this mission was unreasonable, then he would have talked to the knights. But since Jin had no objections, he could only accept his choice. He liked Jin's straightforwardness. Zed said that the three of them would be leaving in 2 days. The twins still couldn't believe Jin was going to Mammoth. To make sure of this, they asked Zed about it. Zed replied, since Jin said he was ready, he didn't need to stop him. Daytime training sessions were cancelled for the duration of the missions. Zed told them to make sure that their personal studies would not interfere with the tasks in any way. The twins stood awkwardly around Jin for a while. Although they were thrilled that their brother was about to die, they were also unhappy about it, as if there was a bitter taste in their mouths. The twins did not know that they had a strong love and hate bond with their younger brother. They said that if he was pinned down, then let him reveal himself and say that he was a Rankandel. Then no one will dare to touch him for sure. Jin didn't expect them to worry about him. The twins began to deny it. Jin interrupted them and bared Bradamante, covering him with an aura. The twins froze when their brother suddenly pulled out his weapon. Before they could ask what he was doing, Jin swung his sword, aiming at the clear stone behind them. A beautiful metallic sound echoed through the room. Jin smiled with satisfaction. He suddenly felt that he would definitely succeed if he hit the pure stone right now, and this feeling turned into reality within a few moments. It's been a month since they started training with pure stones. Jin had no idea how incredible this recording was. The twins have to make a choice before he returns. They have to decide who they like best, sisters or him. Then Jin left the room, leaving the two of them in silence. Zed turned to Hayton and Daytona, explaining what Jin meant by that. Jin wanted them not to go against him if they wanted to live happily ever after. 2 days later, those who were assigned a mission finished their preparations yesterday. Before leaving, Jin met with his people. Everyone had grim faces, as if they were a herd of cows being led to the slaughterhouse. No one could guess how many of them would die in their upcoming mission. However, that wasn't the only reason they were depressed. They also heard that their young master was being sent to Mammoth. Yesterday he had already dyed his hair brown and was now dressed like an ordinary traveler. Bradamante was with the boy, but he covered the blade with a layer of metal coating to hide its real color. With such a disguise, no one would ever think of him as a Rankandel. This was his second mission, but his first solo one. He could not arrive in Mammoth as Rankandel. Jin's assignment was different from theirs, so he needed a different teleportation gate. Jin asked why they looked so gloomy. Meza said that everything was fine. They came to say goodbye before Jin left. The reason why the junior squad had come to salute him was quite obvious. This may be the last time they will see the young master. The probability that some of them would die during the mission in the unprotected zone was not only great, but the youngest master Jin was assigned a task in which he had a great chance of dying. Apart from Jin, everyone else in the middle class thought he was going to die. Jin replied that nothing would change from their excitement, so he told them to focus on the task until he got back. They should not waste their energy on vain experiences. They awkwardly said goodbye and left. Jin asked Murekin to look after them. He also said that he should not be caught or noticed. The black cat raised his front paw and waved it, as if to say, "Worry more about yourself, baby." Gilly will be lonely for a while, since they were both leaving, Jin and Murekin. Jin told her to consider it a vacation. He asked her if she wanted souvenirs from Mamita. She knew that Jin was stronger than the middle-class cadets, but she still asked him to be careful. Mammoth is a dangerous place. Thinking that he should kill the lover of the Ice Palace master, she was very worried. Therefore, he must take care of himself. Jin saddled his horse and set off. Mammoth is a criminal district. This is the place where the most repulsed criminal elements gather. There are even rumors all over the world that because of the evil energy emitted by these lawbreakers, this criminal-infested land became so desolate that no plants could grow on it. But it wasn't a rumor. In fact, Mammoth was a barren wasteland where not a single blade of grass grew. The scorching sun, criminals who crawled around a small town like disgusting insects. There was no gate to the city. There was only a broken sign surrounded by garbage. And as soon as you passed by this sign, you found yourself inside Mamita. A huge man screamed, breaking into one of the pubs in the city center. On his back was an equally large and intimidating iron mace. The people in the pub applauded joyfully, recognizing the huge man. One boy entered the bar wearing a torn robe. It was Jin. Everyone here immediately fell silent, watching the newcomer. Jin took one silver coin from his breast pocket and tossed it to the bartender. He ordered a glass of water and a light snack. The bartender caught the coin and snorted as if he couldn't believe what was happening. Soon the whole pub was filled with laughter. The big guy grabbed Jin's shoulder and asked why he was acting like them. He also asked if he was a knight of the 9th rank from some wilderness. The big man threateningly brought his face closer. He said that since Jin came to Mammoth, he should learn its rules. He was telling Jin to get on his knees and lick his shoes. The big guy wanted to say something else, but he was interrupted before he could finish the sentence. In fact, he would never be able to finish his sentence again because the tip of the dagger that Jin took out was stuck in his neck. The huge man was standing too close to Jin, not maintaining vigilance, so he didn't have time to react to the boy's attack. No one expected that this boy would pierce the neck of such a giant without the slightest hesitation. As soon as Jin put away his dagger, blood gushed out of Tonk's wound as he fell to the floor. A long minute of silence followed. No one made a single sound. Jin silently hurried the bartender, urging him to bring cold water and snacks. Soon enough, the men started laughing and joking again. They behaved as if the friendly conversations they had with the big guy until recently were a sham, and returned to their tables drinking beer in their original groups. This was a common occurrence. No matter how friendly they were with him, there was no real friendship between them. As Master Gina said, all the madmen gathered in Mamita. If you want to impress the local marginals, show them strength and fearlessness. These words of his master helped him today. Even in his previous life, he received a lot of support. Jin hoped that the day would come when he would be able to repay his teacher. The bartender put a glass cup and snacks on Jin's table, a cup of cold water. The bartender said he didn't put poison in the food. Jin replied that he knew that poisons were not favored here. The bartender was somewhat surprised that Jin was so knowledgeable about Mamita. He asked if Jin had any relatives in this town. Jin replied that it was none of his business. This time, Jin tossed a gold coin to the bartender, who only shrugged in response. The bartender asked what Jin wanted. Order a murder or find someone? Jin asked if someone who introduced himself as Easter had passed by. The bartender shook his head, saying no. He was sure of that. Jin was somewhat disappointed by this. Jin said he would be grateful if the bartender could tell him where he could spend the night, preferably without bedbugs and all that. There was only one place suitable for Jin's wishes. The hotel in the west of the city is the Moonwell. Even kings stopped there, so Jin could be calm. Western Mammoth, the Moonwell Hotel. Alcaro Shandor, the stupid offspring of the Count. He grew up not knowing what need was. He goes crazy with entertainment and pleasure. All he has is a noble name and a pretty face. A typical scumbag who trembles before the strong and mocks the weak. The reason why he is idly waiting in such a dangerous city is because he wants to attract the attention of the mistress of the Ice Palace. So the only place he can be is a hotel, since he is the lover of the master of the Ice Palace. He probably has a guard. First, Jin decided to scout the situation in the lobby. The atmosphere inside the Moonwell was very different from the pub, as it was home to the most influential people of Mammoth. The hotel was surprisingly clean and orderly, just like an ordinary hotel outside Mammoth. It couldn't be compared to an upscale hotel in a big city, but at least customers won't encounter petty criminals who behave like wild dogs. As soon as Jin arrived in the hall, he tried not to let shock and surprise show on his face. The young man who became hysterical in the center of the hall was Alcaro Shandor himself. Jin had memorized his target's face beforehand, so he recognized him right away. It turned out that he was furious because one of his bodyguards wouldn't give him any more of his favorite treats. Jin was lucky to meet him so soon. All the guards of the Ice Palace had reserved looks, but Jin noticed a slight disgust in their looks that appeared for a moment. They refused him all the time, not giving him his favorite treat. My goal was to protect him, not kill him. Alcaro shouted and blamed them, but he said that he would deprive them of their heads when his beloved returned. The guards sighed. One guard suddenly punched Alcaro in the stomach. The arrogant aristocrat trembled on the spot for a few seconds before losing consciousness. The guards didn't understand why they had to protect this jerk. It would be nice if he just died. The guards carried Alcaro unconscious back to the room. Alcaro's escort is about the 6th rank or so. Killing Alcaro will be much easier than Jin originally thought. The problems will begin after the murder. It is necessary to remove it, avoiding the guards and remaining intact. Jin couldn't use poison. Not to use poison is an unspoken rule of Mamita. Everyone would be offended if he poisoned Alcaro. The guards could also interfere with him. You need to sew Alcaro quietly in the secret room of the Moonwell. Jin slapped the table. He made a decision. I decided to raise the Moonwell by magic directly from the room. As soon as he adds the shadow energy of the 4th rank, he will receive the permissive power of the 6th, so they will decide that this is a magician of at least the 6th rank. Who would think of a brat who was barely 15? That's right, nobody. Even Veridin Zippel barely reached that level. In addition, thanks to the properties of shadow energy, he will not leave traces of the use of magic, so there will not be a single reason for suspicion. Jin correctly started the release of shadow energy. As the room filled with more and more dark energy, the sounds from behind his door became fainter and fainter. The room was filled with the energy of shadows, as if ink had penetrated into all surfaces and into the air. The outlines of the furniture could not be seen. In fact, it was synonymous with total darkness. The only thing that retained color in the room was the genie. No matter how much he thought, this plan was a little crazy. Jin praised himself and his plan. He started collecting mana with both hands. A blue current ran down his arms to his hands, making a lot of noise. However, not a single soul could hear the sounds outside the room as Jin had planned. Then threads of shadow energy were mixed into the current, summoning lightning. The first lightning fell on the moon well, destroying half of the roof of the building. Before the injured screamed in pain, before the whole could raise their heads and look at the sky, a second streak of dark blue lightning struck the moon well. This was the second attack. People started running out of the ashes, screaming. A few minutes before that, the girl and her 2 guards were walking through the dirty streets of Mamita. They were wearing the distinctive robes of the Ice Palace. She asked one of the guards how many bodyguards Alcaro had. 6. He has 6 bodyguards. The girl crumpled the paper in her hands. All the difficulties are due to a puppy who does not know his place. The second guard smiled. He will be finished today. His mistress was here to personally get rid of Alcaro. She sped up to reach the moon well faster and tell the bodyguards the good news. A huge lightning bolt struck the moon well. The girl who was about to enter the moon well tilted her head in confusion. Watching this spectacle, whoever the people who attacked the hotel were, they definitely chose the wrong day. It was Ceres and Dorma, the commander of the 7 swords of the Ice Palace, as well as the daughter of the master of the Ice Palace. One of the guards suggested that some high-ranking magician harbored a grudge against the Moonwell, but it could be an attack on their Ice Palace. There are 6 people of their palace in the hotel, and her mother's lover is there too. Ceres hurried them on. I don't care about Alcaro. The priority is the lives of their people. The third bolt of lightning fell on the Moonwell. Ceres had to stop. Immediately, the last lightning struck the hotel. The 4th charge was much stronger than the first 3, as Jin strengthened the spell using all the energy of the shadows in his room, which, in turn, erased all traces of dark energy in him. A streak of electricity hit the hotel in the center, and the building split in half. The divided hotel was on the verge of collapse on both sides. Ceres entered the ruins of the building, hoping for the safety of her people. When she entered the ruins, Jin fell from the 2nd floor. The fall from the 2nd floor wasn't that painful, but Jin needs to pretend. Maybe it was because he had spent all the energy of the shadows on the last lightning bolt. But it was damn close to the 7th rank. Thanks to the pendant, he managed to avoid serious injuries. The boy looked at his surroundings, acting as naturally as possible. He had to check if Alcaro was alive or not. Although he didn't see the target of his murder, Jin noticed the bodyguards running around. There was still smoke in the lobby. If Alcaro has survived extremely powerful lightning spells, Jin should find him now and kill him. It was his only chance. Jin wanted to pull out his dagger, but froze. He looked up and saw a strange girl looking down at him. She didn't expect to meet her peer here. She asked if he was okay. Jin has to go outside to a safe place, so she told him to move. The guard reported that their people had gathered. All 6 were wounded, but with safety. It was a relief to her. Ceres ordered that if Alcaro was still with them, then let them kill him. The lightning magic was homogeneous. It was definitely one person. She ordered the magician to be captured. The genie on the floor immediately understood after hearing their conversation. She is the daughter of the master of the Ice Palace. Judging by her behavior, she came all this way to deal with Alcaro. An unexpected meeting. But Jin considered this meeting a blessing rather than a misfortune. According to what she said, even if Alcaro survived the spells, they would still kill him, so he doesn't have to check it out and kill it himself. Moreover, the daughter of the master of the Ice Palace believes that this attack was committed by a magician and does not suspect Jin. From now on, the highest authority here at the inn was the daughter of the Ice Palace master. Even if the kings of Mamita were revered by the city and considered royalty here, they didn't stand a chance against her. It is very likely that she will suspect this as a terrorist attack against the Ice Palace. It wasn't just a girl. The rest of the visitors living in the Moonwell thought they were attacked by a wizard. Thus, the chances of Jin being charged with a crime were extremely small. However, there is one problem. If the daughter of the Ice Palace master remembers his face, then things may get complicated in the future. Alcaro's guards reported that he did not survive the magical attack. While the girl was talking to the men, Jin grabbed a handful of soot and wiped his face with it. It was better than nothing to hide his face. Ceres drew a snow-white sword and lifted it into the air. She stated that the Ice Palace would gain control of this hotel. She is Ceres Endorma, daughter of the master of the Talaris Ice Palace. Everyone who is against it will be considered enemies of the Ice Palace from now on. The Mamita kings were against it. They didn't care about the name of the Ice Palace. Mamita kings ruled here, not the Ice Palace. Maybe it was because of the Ice Palace that they were attacked. She instantly appeared behind the loudest kings, chopping off their heads. As she said, the protesters will become enemies of the Ice Palace. King Mamita did playing the rulers of this cesspool allow them to look down on the Ice Palace. If it turns out that the attack was the fault of the Ice Palace, they will receive compensation. But what if they were the target of the magician, and the Ice Palace turned out to be an accidental victim? It was clear why the Ice Palace had to take control of this place. The Mamita kings could only agree. They did not want to become enemies of the Ice Palace. After that, she turned to Jin, asking why a kid like him was still here when she told him to leave. Unlike her conversation with the Mamita kings, Ceres used a much softer and gentler tone when addressing Jin. Jin replied that he was scared and hurt his leg. Ceres laughed, saying that Jin is quite timid for a man and too cute for a swordsman. Ceres took out an ointment made from healing mana. Jin was about to receive her with his sooty hands. Seeing this, she asked only to roll up her pant leg. Jin awkwardly pulled down his pant leg. Ceres sat down and rubbed the boy's shin with ointment. She declared that Jin was a real lucky guy. Not only did he manage to survive the magical attack, but she, Ceres Endorma, shares the medicine with him. She said to take it as the greatest honor. Jin asked how he could repay her for her kindness. Ceres smiled kindly. She said it was nothing. And how can someone like him repay her? Let him just think of it as a pleasant memory. She cut herself and left him alone. Jin waved after her with a smile. As soon as she was no longer visible, the smile on his face subsided. The mission was accomplished. Meanwhile, Gina's squad was carrying out its own mission. And contrary to the expectations of all representatives of the middle class, the members of the Jin faction coped well with the orcs. They had already subdued 17 of the 25 orcs they were tasked with defeating. The orc that had just been killed was the 18th. They now believed that they could return without loss. Taiment and Scut were already celebrating, laughing. They imagined how they would rub the nose of the freaks who laughed at them. Mesa seriously warned them, telling them not to relax. They still had 7 orcs to kill. While Mesa burst their little bubble of excitement, she was actually smiling deep inside, as if they were blessed by the gods. No, it could be their young master Jin was blessed by the gods, and this blessing touched them as well. All the members of Jin's faction were of the same opinion. Orcs usually moved in groups. However, for some reason, these orcs appeared one at a time, as if asking to be killed. At the same time, they were never in a hurry, but attacked the cadets sluggishly. No wonder they thought they were very lucky. After a short rest, they resumed hunting. While they were walking through the forest, one cat was watching the cadets from behind, hiding in the thick tall grass. Once they defeated the remaining 7 orcs, he would finally be able to return home as well. Mesa thought they were protected by the blessing of the gods. But in fact it was the black dragon Murakin who acted as their guardian angel. Murakin arrived here, in the unprotected zone of the Principality of Kirano. Even before Jin's squad killed part of the orcs, he gathered them all, ordering them to walk one by one. If they disobey his order, he will destroy them all. The lower orcs could not go against the orders of the great black dragon. Moreover, he spoke to them in the dragon language, a language that personified the power of dragons. Dominating the minds of lower monsters with the dragon tongue was as easy as breathing for Murakin. He was the only reason why Jin's faction could safely defeat the orcs one by one. Needless to say, the cadets had no idea about this truth. Murakin was unhappy that Jin forced him to do such unworthy things. So what if he's a soldierate contractor? The black cat grumbled with displeasure. But still, he was watching Jin's faction. He will definitely make him buy him new comics. Murakin's pupils suddenly narrowed. He immediately transformed into his human form. He sensed a dangerous presence in the distance, slowly approaching the camp where the squad was staying. Murakin bitterly clicked his tongue and stood up. Fortunately, the cadets only had the 3rd rank. Thus, Murakin could erect a large barrier around the camp, and the children would not be able to distinguish the darkness of the night from the dark hemisphere protecting them. A handful of shadows gathered in both of his palms. It was on a completely different scale compared to the demonstration he had staged in the underground Hall of Storm Castle. Since Murakin lived next to Jin on the surface of the continent, he slowly inhaled the many shadows around him every day. Thus, he regained some of his strength from the era when he was known as the Black Dragon that shook the world. While Murakin was covering the camp with a barrier of shadow energy, Belop, who was on duty in the night watch, tilted his head in confusion. It seemed to him that it was suddenly darker around him than before. However, he did not attach much importance to this. The boy just believed that it was dark, and did not notice the barrier. When a gust of strong wind shook the trees, Muraken also covered his entire body with spiritual energy. Soon, a huge black dragon emerged from its original position. This was the original form of Muraken. His giant pair of wings covered the moon. All the monsters, as well as animals and other living creatures in the area, began to tremble from instinctive fear and subconscious terror. Unsurprisingly, the powerful creature approaching the camp also stopped. He found Muraken. How dare someone send his warriors without his permission? There was no response. Muraken realized that this was not a living being, but a relic of ancient times, the grave giant. But Muraken was sure that their dragon clan got rid of them a couple of thousand years ago. Besides, the giant guarding the graves of the dead gods could not be here. Wherever he came from here, it wasn't the most pleasant meeting. The grave giant raised his huge shield. Muraken was preparing to exhale. Although it will leave traces, he has to finish this fight as quickly as possible. Muraken opened his mouth, and darkness gathered in a dangerous sphere. In a few seconds, he had accumulated enough spiritual energy to completely level an entire mountain range. When he exhaled, everything around him suddenly plunged into complete darkness. The grave giant lowered one leg and hid behind the shield, but could not resist the power of Muraken. All he could do was let out a final groan at death's door, just like the rest of the grave giants did 2,000 years ago when they faced the dragon. When he breathed his last, the grave giant fell apart into small pieces, and a rain of rubble rained down on the place where he used to stand. After the end of the battle, Muraken returned to his human form and was breathing heavily. His whole body seemed to be falling apart because he was using too much energy for the first time in a long time. The grave giant could not appear here by chance. No matter how much Muraken thought, the Zippel family was clearly involved. What the hell was going on in this world? It would be better if Muraken didn't tell Jin anything yet. If anything happens, he can protect him. Jin has grown a lot in 10 years. Muraken was sure that Jin would have enough strength in the future to go against the Zippel family. Gaston walked in circles and dragged his fat body. He was so excited that he couldn't stop biting his thumbnail. A man entered the room. This man was Bishkal Ibriano, the head of the terrorist group Kinzello. Buber informed him that his creation, the Tomb Giant, had been destroyed. Bishkek was aware of this. As far as he knew, the Tomb Giant had been attacked at night. Bauber clutched his head. He never thought that anyone would dare to destroy his precious creation. Bishkal replied that this is not the most important thing right now. The one who defeated the grave giant is a dragon. Moreover, a shadow dragon. Bishkal personally went there to check everything. Buber stopped fussing and silently looked at Bishkal. Did the dragons really notice their work? Bishkal wasn't sure yet, but he thought it was a warning. He told Bubara to look around here. He will send people to help him. He needs to meet with the Zippel family urgently. The successful return of Jin and the junior squad from their respective missions was the hottest topic in the intermediate class. No one predicted such an outcome. Most people believed that although some members of the junior squad would return alive, many of them would die during the mission. However, the biggest surprise was the Jin. He had to kill the lover of the master of the Ice Palace in Mimita, and no one thought that this was achievable. They all thought that Jin would return without completing the mission. No one in the world wants to die at the age of 15. Even Zed was surprised by the success of the mission. He praised Jin several times in front of the other cadets and expressed his satisfaction and delight. The flag bearers who gave him this task will obviously be surprised. Why? They'll be furious when they find out how it went. There was one group of cadets who gritted their teeth irritably while watching this, and the details of Jin's assignment reached them. By some miracle, on the same day, a magician staged a terrorist attack at the hotel where the target of the task was staying. They considered Jin a real lucky guy. They complained about the injustice of this world. Not only Rankandel, but also kissed by fate. No matter how hard some try, they will never reach above the average cadet. They were cadets from Mew and Anna's faction, including Kaj and Romero, who were sitting on the ground and complaining together. They used to be at the top of the food chain in this jungle-like intermediate class, but recently their authority and power have plummeted. The humble cadets who had once been wary of them were now sucking up to the junior squad, and it annoyed them to death. If Jin or the other guys were exceptionally strong, they would have accepted this outcome. But Jin is only a knight of the 4th rank, and the rest of the 3rd. They asked Kajan if they would leave everything as it is. And what did they offer? Even if Jin was arrogant and the youngest lord, he still had pure Rankandel blood in his veins. Until he gets a direct order from Mew, he can't do anything. Kajan suddenly fell silent. He noticed that Jin, who was sitting on the other side of the training ground, suddenly began to approach them. The cadets began to fuss. Had they been heard? Jin replied that he had excellent hearing. Unfortunately, he heard everything. Jin shrugged and spoke as he joined the group. The expressions on the faces of Kajan and the others darkened noticeably. Jin asked Kajan about how his hand is now. Kajan replied that the doctors said that due to how smoothly Jin cut it off, it was easy to restore it. Jin noted that they had quite an interesting discussion. Kajin told him not to pay much attention, because most ordinary people, when faced with someone like Jin, whisper behind their backs. Jin said it didn't matter what he did or didn't do until he became a flag bearer. Roughly speaking, it had nothing to do with them. Despite the shock and surprise, Kajin changed his attitude and chuckled softly. It doesn't concern them. Kajin asked if he would be whipped instantly for something like this, if only Jin wanted to. Jin was silent for a moment, and then he asked, why would he do that? Because he behaves extremely brazenly. Jin agreed with Kajin's words because he was like an eyesore. Kajin's sarcastic and arrogant tone surprised his own associates. Even the other cadets in the area who were having their own conversations fell silent and turned to them with their eyes wide open. The other cadets began to gather around them, whispering to each other. Classes have already ended for today, so Zed and the assistant instructors have already left. Kajin got up from his seat and decided to say whatever he wanted. In his opinion, it will be unpleasant for anyone to watch how Jin gets universal recognition, having completed the mission only on pure luck. It looks like there was a misunderstanding. Jin said that, not because Kajin was mocking and behaving impudently. Kajin Romero, as a knight of the 5th rank with outstanding abilities compared to intermediate class cadets, Kajin should be stronger than Jin. So Jin asked why he resorted to swearing behind his back. This time, Jin drew his sword and pointed it at Kajin. Jin has already said that everyone had the opportunity to challenge him. Jin took a few steps back and got ready. Kajin only looked stunned, while the other cadets couldn't hide their shock and tension. But why would young Master Jin do that? Everyone was asking the same question. Although Jin was strong, they all believed that he was still inferior to Kajin, that he would never be able to defeat a knight of the 5th rank. Kajin raised his head and silently looked into Jin's eyes, asking if Jin was sure of this. Absolutely. Jin was absolutely sure. He told Kajin to draw his sword. There was no need to give in to him. He wanted to deal with everything properly. This meant that they could not put aura restrictions. Kajin stood up and drew his sword. He said Jin would regret it. Kajin was the one who took the first step. He instantly closed the distance between them and used his superior physique to overpower the opponent in a frontal attack. Each sharp swing created deep reverberation that made Jin stagger. Kajin had really heavy attacks. Kajin Romero, 24 years old, knight of the 5th rank. He was only a mid-level cadet in the Rankandel clan. But in the outside world, he was strong enough that every group and organization around the world was trying to recruit him. Even if he left the clan right now, he could easily find a job as a knight and be revered by the public as a respected warrior. Among all the people Jin had faced in the swordsman duel, Kajin was the strongest opponent so far, even if you take into account Jin's opponents from his past life. But Kajin is no match for those with whom he has to fight. As the battle continued, Jin continued to retreat while Kajin pursued him like a predator. One could easily see the malice in Kajin's eyes as he brandished the sword. Kajin began to say that Jin was still too weak to fight with him on equal terms. Kajin instantly changed his stance and grabbed his sword with both hands. Then he enveloped him with an aura and swung with all his might. It was as if he was holding a warhammer instead of a sword. He even tilted his sword to strike with the flat of the blade. He was trying to destroy Jin's defenses. Even though Jin parried the blow, he received a kick, and Jin barely managed to hold his sword. However, his posture was broken. It was the same with Kajin, but that was his intention from the very beginning. Kajin swung with all his might, hoping to destroy his stance. Taking advantage of the recoil from his extreme punch, Kajin kicked his opponent in the thigh with a U-turn. The shields he wore enhanced his overall strength and damage. Jin gritted his teeth as his thigh throbbed in agony. He didn't have time to moan loudly. Kajin had already regained his balance and launched a series of attacks. Jin started dodging Kajin's attacks. However, Jin didn't back down out of fear. He was trying to concentrate on a certain sensation. Just like the day Hayton hit him with a steel ball, he was beginning to understand the trajectory of Kajin's next strike. There are an infinite number of ways in which a single blade can move when sliding through the air. But for a knight of the 5th rank, there is a limited number of trajectories that he can choose with his skill level. This was especially true of opponents like Kajin, who allowed rage to control his mind and body. Thus, Jin decided to end the fight with the next 3 moves. He had to provoke Kajin even more to get him to use his hidden skills and techniques, if there were any. Jin said he was reading all of Kajin's actions. He couldn't win. Kajin shouted that Jin was saying meaningless things. Jin only had to dodge twice. He believed that Kajin would stick to the attack pattern he had used so far. There was no need to change plans or tactics. In fact, now that Jin had provoked him by saying he could read Kajin's movements, Knight 5 would never change his approach due to his rage and arrogance. But if Jin avoids Kajin's attacks perfectly 2 more times, he will have to make a choice. Either he would change tactics, or he would use his most powerful attack, which Jin would not be able to dodge or block. And needless to say, the fight developed exactly as Jin predicted. One left swing followed by an incorrect upward swing. Jin did not parry these attacks and calmly dodged them. He spread his legs and crouched down to avoid the first move, and stepped aside in advance to avoid the second. During this brief exchange, Kajin was in turmoil. He admitted that Jin could have dodged the first punch. However, the boy dodged the unpredictable upward strike even before Kajin started to raise his sword. Thus, Kajin released his entire aura to strengthen his third attack. Will Jin dodge his attack by reading his moves? Or will the boy not be able to dodge it? The human body was not as free and flexible as water. Something unexpected happened. Jin didn't try to dodge the powerful attack. Instead, he also covered his sword with an aura and swung it with all his might, taking the attack head-on. When the two blades met, the one who was pushed away, oddly enough, was Kajin. The Knight of the 5th lost to the Knight of the 4th rank. He was thrown back in a battle of strength. A few seconds ago, he was overpowering Jin with his large physique, but this time, Kajin was stunned. His eyes were trembling as he couldn't hide his shock. The aura covering Bradamante had a color and luster that was much deeper than that of a 4th-ranked knight. Jin took advantage of Kajin's confusion and rushed forward. Anyone will find themselves in a difficult position when faced with an opponent who will be much stronger than they originally expected. Kajin finally realized that he had let his guard down when Bradamante's blade reached his neck. So, the winner has been decided. Jin himself did not expect that he would become a knight of the 5th rank so soon. Kajin said in a disappointed voice that Jin had tricked him when his sword fell to the ground. He didn't know that Jin already had the 5th rank. Jin wasn't lying. It's just that Kajin didn't know anything about him. Jin never gets into a fight if he knows he's going to lose. Two men came running late to the training ground. It was the twins who had heard the news about this fight a few minutes ago. They asked what happened here. The twins couldn't hide their surprise when they saw two figures standing in the center of the crowd. Jin turned and sheathed his sword. Walking slowly past his older brothers, he calmly said that it was nothing special. The twins felt their little brother's words give them goosebumps. Miu and Anna couldn't believe what they heard from Kajin's report. It wasn't a surprise attack. Jin didn't attack suddenly, and Kajin didn't put himself in a dead end. A knight of the 5th rank had much more experience and physical strength than a boy. Maybe Kajin was bribed or he succumbed because Jin was a Rankandel. None of this. Kajin didn't make excuses. Then why? Was he seriously telling them that their junior had reached the 5th rank in such a short period of time? Did he really want them to believe that? Not only Kajin, but also the others could confirm that Jin's strength exceeded the 5th rank. Miu and Anna kicked Kajin out, calling him useless. As soon as Kajin left the room, the two women stared at each other. Their youngest showed them teeth. No, not just for them, but for the whole family. Next time, they'll send him to a place where he'll definitely come back dead. There was a commotion in the Garden of Swords. Everyone was amazed by Jin's abilities. The first chapter, His Father in the Moon, and the entire history of the Rankandels. Only 3 became knights of the 5th rank at the age of 15. So, here's what Jin had at the moment. The 5th rank of swordsmanship, the 4th of magic and shadow energy. Even he hadn't expected such a level of swordsmanship. I just trained with a pure stone in the usual mode and reached the 5th rank. It seems that if one of his 3 powers, shadow energy, magic, or aura, becomes stronger, then it affected the rest. When he was overloaded with shadow energy earlier, he opened a stream of mana and aura. In all history, no one had such abilities, so it was useless to search for records, but Jin was sure that these 3 forces were connected. Jin noticed flowers that hadn't been there before. They were brought into the room while he was gone, so Jilly didn't put them away. She asked if she should put them away. Jin shook his head. There were no curses on them, so let them stand. Returning to the topic of conversation, since they discovered that he had become a knight of the 5th rank at 15, his brothers would start to get a little nervous, including brother Joshua, who is vying to be the next head. Joshua Rankandel. When Luna Rankandel abdicated her position as the first standard bearer, the second standard bearer Rankandel became a strong candidate. With the support of his mother, Rosa Rankandel, he consolidated his position. Jin would like to hide his abilities until the time comes and he decides that revealing his achievements will bring more benefit. Since it became known that he had reached the 5th rank, news about him would spread beyond the Rankandel lands. Surely it will even be covered in the press. Nurakan in the form of a cat grinned. Their baby Jin has become so outspoken in compliments to himself. Nurakan was sure that if Jin was the center of attention, his brothers would become more obedient. That was true. But more importantly, Shiren Rankandel will personally arrive at the Garden of Swords. Shiren needs someone else for the role of heir. Other than Luna, Shiren has never been happy with any of Jin's seniors. Luna, who was the only one who got his attention, was not interested in the throne, so he decided that she was not suitable for the role of the head of the family. Then Joshua strengthened his position. Brother Diff, Sister Runsha, and Sister Marie became temporary successors. This line was carved in stone, but since Jin appeared, everything has changed. Shiren Rankandel does not look at age. He's the kind of person who gives everyone a chance, so he'll be chasing Jin, just like when he was a regular rank. Jin was sure that his father's orders would include two things. First, this is a test. Jin thought about it. Will he be able to overcome the age difference between him and his brothers? Secondly, it is protection. Shiren clearly wouldn't want Jin to die at the hands of relatives before he passes the test, and all because he is a special case. Jilly said that if Jin's story was published in the newspapers, he would be inundated with invitations from families and groups from all over the world. She was right. Jin will sort out all the meetings at once, namely, hold a banquet when Shiren arrives, so Jilly should be ready. It will be her responsibility to keep an especially vigilant eye on Murakin. If he turns into a human and makes his way to the reception, then this will be the end of them. Murakin protested. He wasn't a child. Jilly said she would take Jin's words into account. Murakin stared at Gilly, but the nanny simply avoided looking into his eyes and averted her gaze. 2 days later, the family began receiving letters, just as Jin had predicted. Since Jin was never shown to the public outside of the clan, the messengers desperately tried to get more information about him. The butler was very busy answering an endless stream of letters. When Gilly asked Pedro, it turned out that even the ruling family of the Bement Empire did not stay away. Through Khan, the head of the family sent a schedule of visits home. He planned to arrive in a month, and the arrival dates of other families were immediately scheduled. Gilly noted that the young gentleman had become quite quiet lately. Jin closed the book. He replied that if they tried to take control of him when everyone's attention was focused on him, it would be like a demonstration of either their fear or hatred, depending on the reputation. The man who ran up to Jin with a frustrated expression on his face was Pedro, the second butler. As soon as he saw the butler's face, Jin knew that the time had finally come. Pedro's whole body was soaked with sweat. It turned out that he had run through the huge sword garden to tell Jin this urgent news. He said that Jin was assigned a mission. Jin was being sent straight to the ruins of Colin. In total, 5 flag bearers came running to the main building with a rose challenge. These were Ran, Vigo, Mew, Anna, and, finally, Runcha. Rosa made them stand up straight in one row and stared at them with a dark, heavy gaze. The barrage of screams and reprimands she hurled at them subsided a little. But as soon as Jin entered the room, she raised her voice again. When Rose let out a deafening roar, the documents and pen holder on her desk flew in all 4 directions. In fact, the pen stand cracked and fell apart because of the energy in her voice. She took a deep breath and turned to Jin. The attention of his siblings also turned to him. Ran and Vigo's looks were tinged with annoyance and annoyance. Their reaction was natural, since they did not participate in the issuance of his mission. Mew and Anna openly demonstrated their dislike for Jin. Their lips were pulled up, but their pupils were red with bloodlust, as if they were warning him that they would kill him if they ever had the chance. Meanwhile, Runcha had a calm demeanor. Rosa asked if he had heard about his mission. Jin replied in the affirmative. Rosa said the mission was cancelled. There is no chance that he will go to Colin. Mew and Anna simultaneously raised their voices and took a couple of steps forward. Rosa ordered them to be silent. According to her, these mutts only thought about killing the younger ones. Rosa looked at her daughters with an icy gaze. However, the 2 daughters did not let themselves be intimidated. They said it was strange. They didn't understand why their mother was so protective of the youngest. Father and mother silently encouraged their quarrels. Isn't it because their family needs competition? Everyone here grew up fighting. So many times they were sent on ruthless missions when they were only of average rank. Mew and Anna were right. Conflicts and secret harassment between brothers and sisters in the Rankandel family were inevitable. In fact, it was the fate of all the children of Rankandel. Moreover, Shiren and Rosa never intervened to stop the bloodshed happening among their children. Rosa agreed with the words of her daughters. But did they reach the 5th rank at the age of 15? Junior was different from all of them. If they had jumped to Jin's level at his age, then she would have protected them too. Rosa openly said that she gave Jin priority, but they didn't deserve her protection. Mew and Anna's faces contorted. They could only lower their heads, burning Jin with a look full of hatred.